What if Jamaica's ocean concealed a hidden treasure? Imagine a city so rich, so decadent, and so utterly wild that it was known across the globe as the wickedest city on earth. This was a place where one out of every 4 buildings was a tavern or a brothel. And pirates didn't just visit, they practically ran the town. It was the second largest English city in the New World, right behind Boston, a glittering hub of commerce and chaos in the heart of the Caribbean. A port so wealthy that cold, hard cash was the only thing that talked no bartering, just coins. This wasn't some fictional pirate haven. This was Port Royal, Jamaica. It was a real place, buzzing with life, brimming with treasure plundered from Spanish galleons, and humming with the energy of 10,000 souls crammed onto 51 acres. But what if I told you that this entire metropolis, in the blink of an eye, was swallowed by the sea? Wiped off the map, creating a real-life Atlantis, perfectly preserved for centuries beneath the waves. This isn't a story about a mythical sunken city. This is the story of a very real one and the incredible historical treasures that are being pulled from its watery grave. We're going deep into the ruins of Port Royal to uncover the truth about the day the world's most notorious city sank, and what it left behind. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the ground in Port Royal didn't just shake witnesses. Instead, it began to roll like the ocean waves. The very earth liquefied, turning to water beneath people's feet, sucking entire buildings, streets, and screaming citizens straight down. Then a massive tsunami rose up over the city walls, dragging what was left into the harbor. In just minutes, 2/3 of Port Royal, the richest and most wicked city in the Western Hemisphere, vanished. But what the earthquake took, it also preserved. It created an underwater time capsule, a snapshot of life frozen at the exact moment of disaster, a treasure far more valuable than pirate gold. And inside that time capsule, a single brass pocket watch. Its hands stopped forever at 11:43 a.m. The wickedest city on earth. To understand what was lost, you first have to understand what Port Royal was. Long before the English, the indigenous Taino people used this strategic point for fishing. The Spanish later named it Cayo de Carina, or Careening Cay, a spot to clean and repair their ships, but they never built a major settlement. That all changed in 1655 when an English force, after failing to capture Hispaniola, took the poorly defended island of Jamaica as a consolation prize. They immediately recognized the strategic genius of the location. Port Royal sat on the tip of a long sand spit, commanding a huge, deep, and well-protected harbor. It was the perfect place for a fortress to control the shipping lanes. But England had a problem. They held Jamaica, but the mighty Spanish fleet still dominated the Caribbean. So Governor Edward Doyley made a deal with the devil. In 1657, he sent an open invitation to the Brethren of the Coastal's Confederation of Pirates and Providers to make Port Royal their home. The deal was simple: use our harbor, and in return, you'll help us defend it by attacking our common enemy, the Spanish. It worked brilliantly. Pirates, who were often state-sanctioned sailors or privateers hired by the English government, flocked to Port Royal. They would raid Spanish ships and colonies, then return to Jamaica loaded with gold, silver, and other priceless goods. And they spent that money with total abandon. The city exploded, becoming a boomtown fueled by pirate plunder. Historical accounts paint a picture of sheer opulence and debauchery. Think multi-story brick houses, grander than those in most other English colonial towns. The streets teemed with merchants, artisans, tavern keepers, and sailors from all over the world. By 1688, over 200 ships visited the port in a single year. The wealth was so staggering it was said there was more cash in Port Royal than in London, proportionally. In one night, a pirate could spend more on drink and women than a plantation worker earned in a year. This is where it got its nickname, the wickedest city on earth. It was a city of stark contrasts. On one hand, it was a vital commercial hub for the British Empire, a key point in the horrific transatlantic trade of enslaved Africans, and a center of a new global capitalism. On the other, it was a haven of lawlessness. The city's signature drink was a black, out-inducing rum nicknamed Kildavel. 1 in every 4 buildings was a bar or a brothel. Pirates like Roach Brasiliano would reportedly get so drunk he'd de-roam the town attacking people at random. Yet, this was also the city that the legendary Captain Henry Morgan called home. Morgan, maybe the most successful privateer of all time, carried out spectacular raids against the Spanish. His success eventually got him knighted and appointed lieutenant governor of Jamaica. Ironically, under his watch, Port Royal began to change. Anti-piracy laws were passed in 1687, and the very city that was once a safe haven for pirates became their place of execution. Famous figures like Calico, Jack Rackham, and Charles Vane were hanged at Gallows Point. By 1692, Port Royal was a complex, thriving, and violent metropolis. It had a population of around 6,500 to 10,000 people, including merchants, craftsmen, sailors, and a large population of enslaved Africans who formed the backbone of the city's labor. It was the most important English town in the Americasa, symbol of colonial power, wealth, and moral ambiguity. It was a city living on the edge, both literally and figuratively, built on a foundation of sand. And it was all about to come to a sudden, catastrophic end. The day the earth stood still, almost the morning of June 7, 1692, started like any other. The Caribbean sun was climbing, and the people of Port Royal were going about their business. Many were heading to a tavern or home for their main meal of the day, just before noon. An eyewitness, the church rector, was running late for a lunch appointment when a friend convinced him to stay for a drink, a small decision that saved his life. Suddenly, a roar came from the hills across the harbor. The ground began to tremble. Earthquakes weren't unheard of in Jamaica, so at first, many ignored it. But this was different. The shaking grew violent. Within moments, the ground stopped just shaking and started to move. Survivor accounts describe the solid earth rolling and heaving like the surface of the sea. This event is known as liquefaction. Port Royal was built almost entirely on a spit of loose, water-saturated sand. The intense shaking from the estimated 7.5 magnitude earthquake caused this sand to lose its strength and behave like a liquid. Solid ground turned into a slurry of mud and water. The horror was instantaneous and absolute. An eyewitness named Edmund Heath, writing from a ship in the harbor, said, "The earth opened and swallowed many people. Before my face, heavy brick buildings, some several stories high, lost their foundations and simply sank straight down into the soupy earth. Roads cracked open into gaping chasms, swallowing people whole." As one account horrifyingly details, the ground would open and then slam shut again, leaving some victims buried with only their heads above ground, where they were later set upon by dogs. As buildings collapsed, the city's 6 defensive forts were destroyed or submerged. The chaos was then magnified by a massive tsunami, triggered by the earthquake and an underwater landslide. A giant tidal wave surged over the harbor walls, sweeping away anything not already consumed by the earth. It washed ships from the harbor into the middle of the ruined town, with one frigate, the HMS Swan, coming to rest on top of a collapsed building. In a strange twist of fate, this ship became a lifeboat for hundreds of survivors who scrambled aboard from surrounding rooftops. In just a few minutes, it was over. 33 acres of the city, about 2/3 of its total area, had disappeared beneath the waves, lying under up to 40 feet of water. An estimated 2,000 people were killed instantly in the earthquake and tsunami. In the days and weeks that followed, another 3,000 would die from injuries and disease as bodies polluted the water. The Palisadoes Cemetery, where the famed Captain Henry Morgan had been buried just 4 years earlier, slid into the sea, its caskets mixing with the newly dead in the murky water. What had been the richest English city in the Americas was now a tomb. For many religious observers at the time, this was divine retribution. God wiping a modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah off the map. But for archaeology, it was the creation of something unique in the world. A real-life Atlantis, the same forces that destroyed Port Royal, also created an archaeological site unlike any other. It belongs to a special category of places known as catastrophic sites, like Pompeii and Herculaneum. These are locations where a sudden disaster freezes a moment in time. But Port Royal is arguably even more significant. While Pompeii was buried in ash, Port Royal was instantly sealed in an oxygen-depleted underwater environment. When the buildings, streets, and all their contents sank into the harbor, they were quickly covered by layers of silt and sediment. This blanket of mud created an anaerobic or oxygen-poor environment. That's crucial because, without oxygen, the microorganisms that cause organic materials to decay just can't survive. The result, the preservation of artifacts at Port Royal, is nothing short of miraculous. It's the only authentic sunken city in the Western Hemisphere. What lies beneath the water isn't a slow accumulation. It is a perfect snapshot. It's life as it was being lived at 11:42 a.m. on June 7, 1692, just before disaster struck. This is what makes Port Royal a treasure beyond measure. For centuries, the city lay mostly undisturbed, a ghostly outline beneath the waves. In the 1900s, visitors reported being able to see the rooftops from boats, creating the eerie feeling of floating over a lost city. For over 250 years, the sunken city was the stuff of legend. Some salvage and looting happened right after the earthquake, but the full extent of what lay beneath remained a mystery. Link was a fascinating character and engineer, inventor, and a pioneer in both aviation and underwater exploration. Using a mix of diving and excavation gear, Link's team began to systematically survey the site, proving to skeptics that there was indeed a city preserved beneath the seabed. Buttering that it tasted like strongly salted vinegar, and that 1692 must have been a bad vintage year. However, these early days had their problems. It was common for locals to find artifacts and sell them to tourists. The Big Dig, unearthing a lost world. The team focused on what had been the commercial heart of the city, the area around Lime Street. Today, a simple football field on land covers what was once part of this bustling commercial artery. From there, the street runs straight into the harbor, perfectly preserved under the water. Working in the murky, low-visibility waters of Kingston Harbor, where visibility is often only a few feet, was incredibly challenging. Divers often worked by feel as much as by sight. But the results of their painstaking work were revolutionary. Over 10 years, they meticulously investigated 8 buildings, peeling back the layers of time. What they found was an architectural cross-section of a 17th-century colonial city. Buildings ranged from simple, timber-framed structures to substantial, multi-story brick buildings, giving a clear picture of construction techniques. For instance, one was a well-built brick building with a herringbone brick floor and a stairwell leading to an upper floor, which was likely living quarters. The team didn't just find buildings. They found entire work complexes and homes filled with the objects of daily life. One building complex seems to have housed a combination of shops. In one area, they found leather scraps and shoe soles, a clear sign of a cobbler shop. In another part, a huge quantity of cut animal bones and sea turtle shells pointed to a butcher or food prep area. And in yet another section, the large number of pipes and items linked to alcohol suggested a tavern. This meticulous building-by-building approach allowed archaeologists to do something extraordinary: reconstruct daily life in incredible detail. They combined physical evidence from the seafloor with historical documents like probate records, wills, and maps. By cross-referencing artifacts with records of who lived or worked there, they could build a vivid picture of individuals and families. Tragically, the excavations also brought the human cost of the disaster into sharp focus. Beneath the fallen bricks of one building, the team uncovered human remains, a direct and poignant reminder of the thousands who perished. They even found the remains of a ship crushed underneath a collapsing building, evidence of the tsunami that washed vessels ashore. The Texas A&M project fundamentally changed our understanding of Port Royal, transforming it from a collection of legends into a documented, tangible piece of human history. A snapshot of 17th-century life. The real treasure of Port Royal isn't gold coins. It's the unprecedented collection of everyday objects that lets us step back in time. The artifacts, especially from the Texas A&M digs, provide a higher-resolution snapshot of life in an English colonial city. Let's step inside one of these submerged buildings. In what archaeologists identified as Building 5, thought to be a tavern or restaurant, they found a stack of about 25 pewter plates fallen from a cupboard under the stairs where they were stored. Imagine that, a set of dishes waiting for a lunchtime rush that never came. Nearby, they found pewter spoons, drinking glasses, and ceramic cups, many broken exactly where they fell. In another building, they found cast iron skillets still in the fireplace, a final meal interrupted. These aren't just objects, they are frozen moments. The excavations revealed the city's bustling economy. In one complex, the discovery of leather scraps and shoe soles gave a direct link to a cobbler. Unused white clay tobacco pipes found in large numbers, along with corked and monogrammed wine bottles, point to a pipe shop and a thriving trade in alcohol and tobacco. The findings also tell us what was on the menu. Archaeologists uncovered huge quantities of cut animal bones from cows, pigs, and goats. But they also found a massive number of sea turtle shells, showing that turtle was a big part of the local diet, likely served in the city's taverns and homes. Perhaps most fascinating is what the artifacts reveal about Port Royal's place in the world. This was no isolated backwater. It was a major hub in a newly globalized economy. Archaeologists have unearthed beautiful Chinese porcelain, evidence of a trade route that stretched across the planet to reach this small Caribbean port. They found pewter from Europe and locally made Jamaican red clay pipes. The global connections don't stop there. Other surprising finds include religious figurines and even weapons made of jade, traced back to regions like Guatemala, suggesting trade networks with other parts of the Americas. The sheer diversity of goods is staggering and shows a city deeply plugged in to emerging systems of global trade. The artifacts also give a voice to those often left out of the historical record, particularly the enslaved Africans who made up a significant part of the population. Archaeologists have identified African-influenced artifacts and are working to understand the daily lives of this community, which is underrepresented in written documents but present in the material culture left behind. From tortoiseshell comb cases and wrought iron hand tools to simple chamber pots, the collection from Port Royal is a complete inventory of a 17th century city. It tells a story not just of pirates and plunder, but of merchants, craftsmen, families, and enslaved people, all caught in a single, catastrophic moment. It shows us a society on the cusp of the modern world, a preview of the consumer culture to come. Section 7. The future of the past, technology, and new discoveries. The exploration of Port Royal is far from over. In fact, we're entering an exciting new chapter, driven by cutting-edge technology that lets us see the sunken city in ways Edwin Link could only have dreamed of. One of the biggest challenges at Port Royal has always been the poor water visibility. But today, underwater archaeologists are using a technique called photogrammetry. This involves taking thousands of overlapping digital photos of the site from multiple angles. Powerful software then stitches these images together to create breathtakingly detailed, photorealistic 3D models of the submerged buildings and artifacts. For the first time, we can digitally drain the water and walk through the streets of 17th century Port Royal. This technology allows researchers to map the entire site with an accuracy that rivals terrestrial archaeology. These digital twins are invaluable for study, conservation, and for sharing this incredible heritage with the public without disturbing the delicate underwater environment. This new wave of research and the site's unparalleled historical value led to a major international recognition. On July 12, 2025, the Archaeological Ensemble of 17th century Port Royal was officially inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This designation is a landmark achievement, making it Jamaica's second World Heritage Site and the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean. The UNESCO inscription recognizes Port Royal's outstanding universal value, citing it as a possibly unrivaled illustration of an English colonial town in the 17th century. It highlights the unique combination of well-preserved land and underwater archaeology that offers a rare window into colonial life, global trade, and the tragic history of the slave trade. This recognition is more than a prestigious title. It will bolster Jamaica's efforts to preserve this fragile site for future generations. As Jamaica's Minister of Culture, Olivia Grange, stated, "The inscription supports our national efforts to preserve this heritage for all humanity and allows the preservation of a site that remains remarkably intact over 330 years later. It's expected to boost cultural tourism, bringing new visitors, researchers, and economic opportunities to the modern-day community of Port Royal, a small fishing village that lives on top of so much history." The future of Port Royal lies in this careful balance of preservation, cutting-edge research, and sustainable development. While much of the underwater city is still not accessible to the public for preservation reasons, these new technologies and global recognition promise new ways to experience its wonders through museums, virtual exhibits, and carefully managed access. The sunken city is slowly giving up its secrets, moving from pirate legend to a global treasure. The story of Port Royal is a powerful reminder that history is all around us, sometimes in the most unexpected places. It shows how, in an instant, our world can be transformed, and how the past can be preserved in ways we are only just beginning to understand. If you find these lost chapters of history as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're always digging into new stories. And let us know in the comments, what other historical mysteries, sunken or buried, do you think deserve a deeper dive? So, what if Jamaica's ocean concealed a hidden treasure? It turns out, it did. But the real treasure of Port Royal isn't chests of pirate gold and silver. It's something far more valuable, a perfectly preserved moment in time. It's a city in a bottle, an entire world sealed away by disaster, offering us an unparalleled glimpse into the 17th century. The story of Port Royal is one of incredible wealth, unparalleled vice, and sudden cataclysmic destruction. But it's also a story of preservation and discovery. From early adventurers like Edwin Link and Robert Marks to the scientific expeditions of Texas A&M and the high-tech digital mapping of today, the exploration of Port Royal has mirrored the evolution of underwater archaeology itself. The pocket watch that stopped at 11:43 a.m. is the perfect symbol for this site. It marks a moment of terror and loss, but also the moment an archaeological treasure was born. The pewter plates, the clay pipes, the Chinese porcelain, they all tell a richer story than any pirate legend could. They tell the story of a complex, globalized city at a pivotal moment in history. Thanks to the recent UNESCO World Heritage designation, the future of Port Royal is brighter than it has been in centuries. It ensures that the wickedest city on Earth will be protected and studied, its stories continuing to emerge from the deep. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest treasures are not made of gold, but of the everyday details of lives once lived, waiting patiently in the dark for us to find them. And it leaves us with a tantalizing question. If a city like this can lie preserved just off the coast of a bustling harbor, what other secrets does the ocean still hold?